Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. Indiana, in recent years, has gotten poor marks for its child care system. Child care advocates say big changes are in the works for this session. Our government reporter Garrett Berquist sat down with the United Way's point man in the State House.
Let's bring in the United Way's Sam Snideman. Sam, thanks for dropping by.
Thanks for having me, Garrett.
So we're about a month away from the short session. What are some of the biggest gaps right now in Indiana's child care system?
I think that access and affordability continue to be real challenges. Obviously, we have many counties in Indiana where, according to data from Early Learning Indiana, we have what they would consider to be below below average access for the demand that exists currently in the child care system. So access is a real challenge, and it is something that affects urban, suburban, and rural communities equally.
In terms of the child care workers, and you touched on this already, what are some of the biggest barriers in terms of first hiring and then retaining those workers?
Yeah. I think just right off the top, it's salary, right? The average, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average child care worker in Indiana makes below $13 an hour. On an hourly rate, that's less than half of what an elementary school teacher would make, but on an hourly rate, it's also less than they could make working at Target or McDonald's in many communities. And so the work of childcare is an emotionally and physically demanding occupation, right? People think, oh, you're playing with kids, but the reality is that you have educational activities, you have emotional support that is demanded, you have often children with behavioral or psychological needs, and some of those manifest themselves in physical ways. And so, you're asking folks to do a demanding job for not very much money, when in this market they can go do a much less demanding job for a little bit more. And so salary, pay, those sort of benefit kinds of questions are a real challenge. I think the other one is, many child care workers have children themselves, and the question is, can I afford to send my own kid to care while I do child care professionally? And oftentimes in this environment, the answer is no.
The Interim Study Committee on Child Care recommended making child care workers eligible for Child Care Development Fund and On My Way Pre-K. How much of a difference would those two changes make?
I think that it would make an enormous difference for folks who are currently in the child care system, who are currently working in it. Many of them, from what I understand, the data show about half of child care workers in Indiana already qualify for CCDF vouchers. And so this would create additional breathing space for a number of other child care workers. I think this also may get some folks who left the profession back in, because they will now have the ability to provide low cost or no cost care to their own children while they pursue their professional goals.
There was also a recommendation to pilot a micro-center model. How would that work?
If you're a small business, say you're a small, mid-sized business, say the station here, right? And there are 10 of you that need child care, and there, so for a total of about 12 kids, right? It might not make a whole lot of sense for the station to offer an on-site care solution because the demand may not be there from a community partner perspective, right? Like, I can't create enough seats to make this an economically viable model. What's nice about micro centers is you can put these in non-residential facilities like the station or a hospital or a small manufacturer. It can serve kids from a variety of ages, be staffed appropriately with the child care ratio rules and all of those things, but it can serve a mixed age without regard to sort of segmenting up classrooms and thereby needing extra staff, right, and extra facility space. So it's a more cost-effective model that we can test out here in Indiana to see if this can generate additional business interest in providing on or near site care, and also test and see how good a benefit it can be.
How does the child care issue impact workforce?
If you talk to the chamber, or if you talk to any business, right, they will tell you that one of the real strongest headwinds that they're facing in this market is not necessarily salary, it's not necessarily benefits, it's these quality of life questions, including access to child care. And so we know that in Indiana we have thousands of families who have made hard decisions about whether to stay in the workforce when there is a child at home who needs care, and they've opted out. So we don't have all of the talent available that we could have if we, as a state, prioritized investments in child care.
This legislative session is only going to last about 2 months, and it's not a budget session. How much of this do you think is realistic?
I think that we've got some legislative champions who are really committed to carrying forward this message. And this is a bipartisan issue. The support that came out of the Summer Study Committee for the recommendations was unanimous. I think that we're in a good place to move the ball on many of these issues now, and recognizing that we still have some work to do to socialize the broader conversation around the need for more investment.
All right, coming up, one of Indiana's longest serving mayors looks back on his 3 decades in office. Welcome back. It's the end of an era in Carmel. Mayor Jim Brainard retiring at the end of the month after 28 years in office. He's one of the longest serving mayors of any city in Indiana's history. He sat down with our government reporter Garrett Berquist to talk about his successes and his regrets.
I was raising my family here, and I thought that that I could make a difference. I had talked to a lot of my friends, and they suggested that I stand for this position. I never thought I would do it for 28 years. I had a goal of getting reelected once and doing it for 8 years. But we were always in the middle of a big project, and we also had a lot of people on our staff that had left better paying private jobs because they believed in what we were doing. We were doing innovative, creative things here. And so I always felt obligated. And we were having fun. We were getting to build this brand new city. And so I kept doing it.
Traffic circles might be the most visible mark you've left on Carmel. You got that idea from Europe?
I saw the roundabouts when I was in grad school in England. And I knew nothing about civil engineering. I was a lawyer by training and studied history and communication as an undergrad. But I saw these things in England. I thought they work better. And so number one, we haven't had to increase the lanes. So many times engineers, to solve a congestion problem, they just add lanes, and all they're doing is building a bigger parking lot to get more cars through the green cycle of the lot, or the light rather. But safety is the major reason we do it. Our fatality rate per 100,000 per year is 2 per 100,000. The national average is 12 per 100,000. Many of our neighboring communities in Indiana are much higher, 15, 20 fatalities per 100,000 per year. So it's all about speed. The human error rate doesn't change that much, but everyone has to slow down at the roundabout, and as a result, when human error kicks in, the injuries and fatalities are much, much less.
Tell me about your decision to pursue a number of environmental initiatives as the city government. Why was that important?
Well, I haven't met anybody yet of either political party that wants their family to drink dirty water or breathe dirty air. This is our environment. This is where we live, and we all have a duty to leave this earth in a better place than we found it. And that's a nonpartisan sort of issue, and so it's been something that's been very near and dear to me for many years, is that when we develop, as we build this new city, we have to do so in an environmentally sustainable way that leaves the place better than we found it. And I think we've done that in Carmel. We know that our mixed-use development in the center core, somebody living in this center part of Carmel, drives a fraction of people who live in the more distant areas drive. So it's better for the environment. We know that our urban parks and green space expansion, our bike trails all allow people to not only be healthier, but to do things that are better for the environment as they move around the community as well, too.
What's one thing that you wish you could have gotten done or done differently?
Oh, I have a whole list of things that I would have liked to have seen happen that didn't. At one point when we wanted to build a large lake on the south side as water drains from north to south in Carmel and make a big park around it, we couldn't find the land. It was too along 96th Street where everything drains. We were too far along in our development in the late 90s to do that. That's one of my regrets. I wanted to build an Eagle Creek type facility. We've looked at many other projects over the years. Some have worked, and most have gone forward, but there's a few that haven't, and I regret some of those that haven't. I wish I'd been more aggressive. I think earlier on we could have gotten more done, but we did do a lot in Carmel. So overall, I'm happy with the results.
Now, Carmel did face several racial profiling lawsuits over your time as mayor, and historically it has had a bit of a reputation for hostility toward black Hoosiers. What should the city do to address this in the years going forward?
Well, we started to address it in 1996. The first year I was mayor. As a result of some actions taken right before I took office, we faced a racial discrimination lawsuit. It was probably a justified lawsuit. We settled that case, worked with the NAACP and the Urban League, and made changes to our policies in Carmel. And I think those will make our police department today is far more diverse than the city. Today, Carmel is 25% non-white, welcomes people from every race, background, religion, place of origin, and I'm proud of that. It's reputation of some of these problems goes back 30 and 40 and 50 years. It's hard to move past, but we've done that in this city. And the data shows that.
What's next for you?
Well, I'm going to have a lot of fun. I'm working on a book for Indiana University Press. Several projects in the works. I'll be able to talk more about those things after I turn over the keys on December 31st.
What advice do you have for anybody who's interested in public service or even just becoming more civically engaged?
Well, do it for the right reasons. Don't do it to see your name in print, because some days that won't be positive. Do it because you care about the place you've chosen to live, the place you've chosen to raise your family and start your business. Do it to make your little part of the world better. If you do it for those reasons, you'll have a positive impact.
All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team takes on the latest grievances against Attorney General Todd Rokita. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Allie Bartlett and Democrat Dana Black. Good to see you both. Hope you had a good holiday. Let's begin with a new disciplinary grievance filed against Attorney General Todd Rokita. This one involves his comments about a reprimand from the Indiana Supreme Court. Allie, we'll begin with you. Both professionally and politically speaking, how much of a threat is this to Rokita?
Obviously, professionally, I'm not going to give any sort of legal opinion on this. But I would say, what's going on now after, we've had the disciplinary proceedings, they haven't even opened a new investigation into the new grievances that were filed. So I think the risk is pretty low at this point.
Dana, we're still very early in this process. Now, the disciplinary commission has not even indicated whether it will initiate formal proceedings, as you know. If it does, though, how does this complicate the Attorney General's race next year, in your opinion?
I don't know well, here in Indiana, I don't know if it will complicate his race. However, I will say it speaks to his integrity and his professionalism that, he will sacrifice his work ethics to score political points by telling, untruths about what everyone else has access to see. And he'll just do that over and over again. So that's what the first grievance was about. The second grievance is that he didn't tell the truth about the first grievance. So I think it speaks to his integrity. I know that we've seen some folks who have put their hat in the ring to run for Attorney General on the Democratic side. So hopefully they can show what integrity looks like and what it means to be truthful.
Allie's shaking her head in disagreement. So go ahead, Allie.
I just want to clarify that what you just said is not consistent with the outcome of the disciplinary proceedings in the Supreme Court. So that's actually not factual. So people should probably go read the outcome from the Supreme Court, because there was nothing about him lying, nothing like that on the record. So I just want to make sure the facts are out there.
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said.
He said untruths. So, I mean, you're claiming that he was lying.
No, not in the affidavit.
Let's be clear.
He spoke differently about the affidavit in front of people when he was not under oath. Under oath, he said one thing, and then when he was not under oath, he said something different.
Right. So any of that would be subject to these further grievances, and there has been no investigation open at all. So
it just speaks to a pattern of behavior, of just, making up stuff as he goes along.
Which could get to the political, which is the separation between the political and the professional stuff, right, guys? So let's move on, though, because we'll wait and see what happens with that one. We want to turn to that child care interview that we heard earlier in the show. Dana, Senate Democrats say they, again, will try to lower the mandatory school age to 5. How much of a role does that discussion play in the child care debate?
Well, I think it'd be amazing, but I think we also need universal pre-K so that we can get kids in school even earlier. We have got to get our students prepared for public education much earlier. And I think it also helps out the parents when there's an opportunity for them to see that their child is getting great education earlier, because they may not be in the education space. So they need assistance in making sure that their students and their young people are ready to go before they get to the first grade. So lowering the age is fantastic, in my opinion.
Allie, how much room is there for ideas like the one we heard, given the fact that, this is not really a budget session?
Well, first and foremost, I think decisions about lowering the age for mandatory school age and all that, we need to separate between the child care discussion and education and school, because those are two different things, right? Because lowering the mandatory school age, that has an impact on kids' ability to learn and their education, and that's separate from what we're talking about kind of with child care. You shouldn't really view that as a child care option necessarily. That should be a decision made on the educational side. I think everyone agrees that we need to do more to promote the child care accessibility in the state of Indiana. Me, more than anyone. I am a working mom. I'm a lawyer. I need good access to childcare, and it has been hard. Yeah. And I think the legislature recognizes that and is going to put in a lot of time and effort to make the right moves on this topic.
I also wanted to go ahead, Dana. Go ahead.
I actually agree with Allie that childcare is a problem, especially when Indiana it ranks really at the bottom when it comes to the amount of childcare available to you.
Yeah, I think we can all agree something needs to be done, right? So yes. I also want to discuss outgoing Carmel Mayor Jim Brainard. Allie, Brainard has long been outspoken on the need to help heat off climate change, as you know. He's also supported some forms of gun control. So is there room for someone like Jim Brainard in today's Republican Party? He's a different cat.
Absolutely. So I think Jim Brainard has been a fantastic example of a successful mayor over the last almost 3 decades. What he has done for the city of Carmel is undisputed. I think the population has quadrupled. And so while he does have views that maybe aren't consistent always with the broad views of the Republican Party, I think he's doing what he thought was right always for the city of Carmel, and it's worked out for him. So I think we can't really just put it into one specific little silo like that. He has this view on the environment and this view on gun control. I think, he has been a Republican that people have respected in the state of Indiana for many years and will continue to respect his legacy as he's outgoing.
In another conversation, though, Dana, Brainard told us that he felt Carmel had improved its relations with people of color. He says that he thinks a lot of Carmel's reputation for hostility toward non-white people is based on long past incidents. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think people can say what they want about relationships with minority communities, but what I will say is this. Brainard has been one of the most progressive Republicans we've ever met. Yeah. I wish more Republicans would adopt some of his views and his positions, because he's not just towing the party line. He is actually listening to his constituents, which I wish more Republicans would do. In fact, he was one of the first mayors to have a proclamation declaring LGBTQ plus folks are more than welcome in Carmel. That is not something the Republicans are standing on these days. In fact, they're attacking more LGBTQ plus folks on a regular basis. So I wish more Republicans were like Brainard. Then maybe we can find better common ground and wouldn't be banning books and stuff like that.
He's done a good job up there in Carmel. Yes, good conversation this week. Good to see you both, and we will talk with you soon. We will be right back. Well, Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics this week. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. You can also find our brand new All Indiana Politics podcast. It's part of the All Indiana Podcast Network over at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.